presented by Gravity Fail 87 from the Mind of Haunted Picnic. Death Dealers.
Hi everyone, my name is Stuart Holmes, aka Haunted Picnic, and I've been making a 80s slasher, campy, horror-inspired game called Death Dealers, which is using the Powered by the Apocolypse system. So it's sort of like my love letter to campy horror because I love the fusion of sort of like, well, the two genres, you know, I feel like of my life that I've absorbed the most have been comedy and horror. And then you watch these sort of films like maybe not so much Nightmare on Elm Street. I actually went back. It was part of research and watched some of those. And I was like, some of these are legitimately really intense. And the, the prosthetic effects and that kind of thing were wild. Like I was sort of like, I've seen The Thing. And then I watched those and I was like, oh, man, okay. And then went to the Jason series and I was like, I see now this is the Venn diagram that I was looking for. And from there and playing different systems like Morkborg and Monster of the Week, which was a huge inspiration, just started trying to make this system where I was like, you know, if everybody's evil, how do you get them to do things without murdering everyone, especially if the subject material is all about murdering everyone. And also the other one that was a group of people. Like it was sort of funny going through the horror tropes and that kind of thing. There's always that inevitable like versus where it's like Jason versus Freddy, because people have been, you know, wanting to see it, and some people have, and you know, it is intriguing seeing those sort of verses. Like, what would it be like when this canon finds this canon? And I was trying to think about it going, how do we get them to hang out? And having seen like a few videos, like I think there's a great one. I can't remember his name. I think it's Worthy Kids or something, but he has an animation where it's Freddy and Jason just trying to buy some stuff at a Quickie Mart kind of style, like deli. And Jason's just using ASL and doesn't talk. And Freddy's going, yeah, and trying to steal stuff. And Jason's the like moral one where he's just trying to like help out. And that was such an interesting dynamic as well. Where I was like, if I could just have both where they're both terrifying to the like teenagers and NPCs, but also they together are on this goal that might stop them from actually just like murdering one another or setting out on their own goals. And that's sort of.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I was previously thinking before I fixed the video here. It's funny is that how you have it presented in Death Dealers, you could easily have it almost like a clock in. They go to their scary warehouse, clock in like, on the clock, did you get anyone tonight? No, I didn't get anyone. Have good luck.
Yeah, that's definitely like what I wanted it to be. And you know, just getting in that similar vein, like I thought it was funny, even though I haven't really played much of these kind of games, the ones where people just get dropped in, or like, you know, like a couch co-op thing where someone just goes, mind if I join? I love the idea of, you know, just someone popping up in a thing, or two people of drastically different themes, like, you know, like The Grudge, and then Jason's there, and it's like, well, we're gonna have to, you know, figure it out. I got my whole hockey mask, you know, teen killing thing, and you do the spooky teleporting, but you know, we'll figure it out. Kind of, I like that.
You walk backwards down the stairs upside down, and I'll stand outside the front door, so that when they run to the front door, I'll be there and just breathe heavily.
yeah. Like, and then we'll go back and, you know, we'll just hang out or something.
Yeah. One thing I also liked is, again, not to name names of other people who have put out playtests recently, but as far as a playtest goes, this feels like it's practically a finished product with its like layout work, art, and everything. How do you decide when, or how did you decide when to put it out for playtesting?
Well, thanks so much for that, because that's great to hear. And Yeah, I guess it's sort of like, I think previously I had, because it's sort of interesting. I feel like a lot of what motivates me in different ways is just like having to get something out. And, it's always tough being like the quality versus quantity thing. And in the past, I had an extremely short attention span and would kind of be like, oh, I've got this great idea. I have to capture it now or it's going to disappear. And then there's something else and I'll do something quickly. And sometimes, that's really important to do and get it out, and you're practicing and working on your craft. And then in recent years has been the one where I'm like, okay, I have this one idea that's bigger than the other ones. And I'm going to have to hold on to this idea for longer than usual. And so that's sort of what I've been doing recently and feeling like I've been getting better at. And it's less like, when you kind of go, oh, do I really want to work on this thing? I know it's mine, but like, can I grow tired of something that I gave to myself? And you can, but you can also find different ways. And for me with this one, previously I hadn't done a lot of playtesting, and then through I think it's RAC, which is like an Australian role play community thing, I managed to playtest a different game at PAX, and I'd never been to PAX, and I'd never really done full playtesting with people I didn't know before. And that was an interesting crash course where I was like, I need to get this like playtestable for people that I don't know, and just spent like a few weeks, like getting friends and anyone to be like, help me do this thing. And then I did it, and that was wild. But after that, I was sort of like, I'm going to have to take more time and then focus on like making something readable, and then also making it visually appealing both for people and myself. And I think part of doing the art and getting it looking kind of as good as I feel like is good enough for me at this point was kind of important, because also I realized through through writing stuff and that kind of thing, there are some incredible writers who can do rules and write out things in such a way that it comes across instantly, and the economy that they use is incredible. Even if it's a lot, what they're talking about could be so much bigger. And then for me, I realized it really is like a half and half, where I need fun prompts and to know what I need to know that's going to stick in my head to use as a GM. And then visual stuff is just as important to be like, oh, that's awesome. To also be like muscle memory, where you're kind of going like, sword icon means strength, is just sort of like buried in there. So part of getting really good with the layout, which I really enjoy doing as well, like it's something I really enjoy doing, is also getting better at visual teaching and learning stuff. Because then I'm like, oh, okay, great. Because I love reference guides, or like even with stuff like Morkboard or something, where it put cheat sheet at the front and then item list at the back. I was like, game changer. That's wild that they're even like, don't even worry about opening the book once you know. Like,
Deaf dealers, like, subscribe, and watch out, because the bargainer has you now.
That's what I really enjoyed, was that you have a narrative in here of I don't want to mess up their name, the bargainer.
Oh, yep.
That you have like the narrative in there, but then as far as layout work, because I like to do layout work too, is you have iconography that's like driving the visual view. So like you're pushing it down, whether that's intentional or on purpose, but it's like, oh, this image correlates to that, and I see it again later, or I know that this is a message to me, the reader, instead of a rule as written kind of thing.
Yeah, I love stuff like that, and I feel like board games really helped with that, when you're seeing those sort of like that typography and that type of symbol stuff, where it's like quotation marks mean someone's talking in a novel. It's great to have this mix of visual mediums in ttrpgs where you can be like, if I establish this color as a thing, then people are going to learn that that's what that means. And that also, in that funny way, it feels like in a Pavlov dog style way, I was tricking myself where I'm going like, oh, that's that GM note I wrote, and I'm looking at some document that looks like terrible. But then when I'm dragging it over, I'm going, oh yeah, because that's that note. I do it in this. It's almost like I've given myself rules where I can be like, don't forget you, and I'm like, you're right. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you balance the narrative in game writing combined with the mechanics? One example that people can look up, or I'll reference here, is I've been recently reading Strongholds and Followers, or something. It's
Okay.
a Matthew Colville book that he published a while back,
Interesting.
and it's very narrative in how it describes its rules, which kind of make it ambiguous for some things, but like highly specific, and great for character development. But with this one, I felt like it was a really good balance. I keep motioning down because it's right next to me, but I feel like it's a good balance between like, here's some rules, here's the story, how to use it, and let's keep moving. So how do you plan that when you're writing and doing layout work?
Yeah, I guess when it comes to that, it's almost like it feels like a strange, perhaps a strange comparison or analogy, like a cookbook, because I know a lot of people who can look at a cookbook and go like, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they go through it systematically, and then it's like, this did not work. I did it exactly as it follows, doesn't work. Other people can also look at a cookbook because they're really good cooks. So it's like, it's almost like improv. If you're really good at thinking up stuff on your feet, then you don't have to worry so much. And you're like, it's got flour of 500, whatever. I put it together. But they're still going to need enough. It's sort of like that. That's where I was at, where I'm like, I'm coming from a very improv first sort of place where I just muck around and bullshit with my friends. And that's a big part of tabletops for me and my group. And different people will have really serious experiences that are equally as like incredible. But that's always where I'm coming from. And then I was thinking, I need to put rules around what I'm talking about so people can kind of do whatever. But it's also like just enough for a recipe that is sort of like, here's what you need to make a cake. The cake may look different, and you can put whatever you want on it afterwards or during. Like, what flavor bread is this? You're going to need the core, but then the flavors, I'm going to leave that to you. So it's sort of like, how much do I put in to leave to people that it's like, people will have to know what skills to use when they roll the dice, because that informs everything else. But when to roll dice, or when can powers be used? Is there a specific time? That feels more like a flavor and more up to the GM or a discussion with the players to be like, can I use this? Is can is a great thing. It's like, this is a can rule. This is a no, a no or a yes, and having either an even amount or a lot of cans that are clear enough that people know that they're in a space where they can ask. And then, you've got your core rules where you don't feel so bad when you're like, what do you mean no? Because it's all like, come on, we've been doing this for ages. And you've got all this, like, that's sort of how I was looking at it, where it was all like, this definitely need, and then this may be more flavor, and then I'll write it sort of in that way.
To change topics a little bit, just because I could definitely go down like a mechanics road of tabletop RPG, and then I feel like that should be a panel conversation. Like, let's get 5 really good or like indie tabletop creators, and let's talk about mechanics and gameplay and how it drives narration, which we did a little bit earlier. I'm sure I'll fix that video edit somehow.
Oh no, good.
But a different question I have is, why do you think horror is something that like people seek out in tabletop movies, video games?
Yeah, I think I was sort of thinking about it, even in like, sometimes questioning myself, because I find myself keep coming back to it and sort of drawn. And sometimes friends would ask me, or I'd be talking with friends, and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm playing this, or I've done that," and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I've been playing this game where I just get chased by a mole underground, and it's really, really terrifying." And and they're like, "What's the goal?" And it's like, "I think to live. I just need to get somewhere, and I'm chased." And I elected to do that. And then you kind of have people be like, "Are you a masochist, or why do you want to be scared?" And I was like, I whenever I answer, I always feel like I'm like, I don't actually like being scared, but I love the idea, and I think that that's part of what makes a good horror, is not relying entirely on, but such a great drive is just primal, like fear and survival are always at the core of these things. And it feels like something that you can rely on, which is like, I feel like 9 times out of 10 people want to live, and so that's always a safe motivation, but that doesn't necessarily create a very good narrative. So then it's that thing where it's sort of like, I always want to live, and I'm going to be motivated by doing things that will ensure my survival, especially if that means like a binary of winning the game or something like that. But then if you're peppering intrigue through it, where it's sort of like, then I think there's the fear of the unknown, and then there's the FOMO of the unknown. And that's what horror is really good about, particularly in games or TTRPGs, where you're like, there is a spooky thing out there. You hear, you have no idea what it is. So you can either never know what it is, or you can find out what it is, and it's still that gamble. And I think it's that gamble that's really a draw for people. And then, and then that sort of idea of like, I did survive, and I learned more, but now it's not enough because there's more to it. So, or like, like H.P. Lovecraft sort of eldritch horror stuff, where it feels like the microscope keeps getting bigger, where you're like, I think I've figured this cult out. That was pretty interesting. Oh no, they're summoning an evil thing that's actually like a galactic threat. Crap. And so that idea as well is really interesting. Like, why I think people get drawn to it is that it's that sort of curiosity is also an extremely primal thing. And so, but it goes against fear, and so that's that beautiful sort of fusion, like people balancing that.
I've had many conversations with coworkers in the past where it also has that element of, well, this is what I would do. So being able to actually like
yes.
play, like if Freddy Krueger shows up and we know that he's like only in this town, I'm getting out of town. I'm going to leave until it stops. I'm out of this town. Or Jason shows up, I'm going to dig a big hole and then cover him in cement. And then you try to do that in like a tabletop or video game, and he just jumps over the hole.
Yeah, it's that it's also that the problem solving of it is which sometimes can supersede the fear, which is always interesting. It's almost like part of bravery is kind of being like, I'm gonna figure this out. And I thought of that actually, like a moment like that in a tabletop or something, when I watched what is it, It Follows, if you've seen that. But it was just one bit where it's like this thing, and it's it's invisible, but then a guy goes, oh, and he throws a blanket over it, classic, and it just makes a silhouette. But I was like, like solving. And it was also that intrigue of like, this is how this works, both narratively and mechanically. And then I was like, yes, okay, excellent. I love that.
Well, and that's what I like about, in the back, you also have various like teens, right? It's the magi, where you, the game master or DM, can like play those teens, and you as the monster can be like, no. All your well-laid plans, no.
Yeah, it was interesting thinking about that in terms of like, because I was sort of like, if these like iconic archetype people are trying to kill teens, how do you make that fair on teens? Superpowered them, but then do I want them to be scary? Because at the same time, I love that part, like it was almost that feeling where it's like, do my players get to be scared because they are the scary thing? And then I was like, I don't know, maybe they can, but they can always have that mystery. And I remember part of playtesting, one of the superpowered teens is a lucky one. And so that just meant you get to fudge with dice rolls and things always go your way. And I remember playtesting that with some friends, and it was interesting at the end because the whole time they're going, what? Or I would silently go, okay. And like as an example, there's a finite resource that you can re-roll any dice, but the lucky will run out of it. But it was funny just watching my friend like squint his eyes, and then at the end I was like, so and talked about how they work, and he was like, oh, I thought he was controlling time, and I was like, what? But then it was that idea as well, where it was almost like I just had someone who's super lucky. And then the idea that whether he was terrified of it or not, the implication that they're fighting a teenager who can control time is going to make him be far more wary than what I had. So even that, I was like, oh, okay, I think I scared him. Not the intention, but that can happen too, like mechanically or narratively.
Yeah. The horror spoof movies where I'm thinking like a scary movie where they scare the villain or befriend them.
Yeah.
Just like lends itself to this, which is delightful. What do you think your next steps are to go from this like play test? Like, what do you want the next steps to be?
Yeah, well, I guess because this is sort of like the first or the like biggest project I've ever done for the longest time, I really would like to like get it published or something. That would be super cool. But I suppose also being realistic and like being a sort of more or less like a greenhorn ttrpg person. I've been in the space for a while. I've made a lot of things, but also like there's a lot I can learn, and there's a lot of people that I would love to meet and talk and do more stuff with. That I feel like what I'm going to do, or what I'm working at, is adding more to this playtest version. Like I've commissioned a map, and I'm doing a mission in it that I playtested a lot, to include going through getting some additional artwork, double checking copyrights, which is really good and important, because I had that where I was like, I have all these placeholders, and then I'm like, sweet, I'm going to email that person and double check again, and I'm going to pay the dues, like that kind of thing. And yeah, adding more art, any other tools, sort of tweaking things. And then I was going to basically do like a short print run, and maybe print, once it's ready, have like poster that's the map, maybe some stickers and things, like fun little tokens, and then the book itself printed out, have like maybe 10 of that, and sell that when it's out of playtest, fully released, and then also have the PDF, and then just sort of take it from there, as in like once it's out in the world, then I can start to be like, right, I need to actually do stuff with this. I should find people to play it, that I can play, or give it to people and have them play, see what it's like. Because I've had the play test out, and I've been happy with how that went. I'm amazed that so many people have downloaded it. That up until this point, I was like, oh wow, cool, that's great.
Yeah. How do you have metrics of like how many people have downloaded it?
Off the top of my head, I think for a while I was really happy that it was pretty much for every view there was a download.
Mm-hmm.
I think when that was at the 100 mark, and I was like, well, that's great. That's all I really wanted, was like, if everyone that's looking at it is also downloading it, excellent. I think now it's like, I think 400 people have seen it, and then 350 have downloaded it, and to me that's great. That's wild.
Yeah,
that that I was like, oh, here you go. And what you want for a playtest as well. So I'm stoked.
I know that there are online services like ttrpg that allow you to put the PDFs and potential print to orders. Is that something that you would do? Because I know that also living in like Australia or overseas, shipping is a nightmare.
Yeah, that's sort of part of what I'm like currently working out with if I can print a few, see how it looks in the physical form to make sure that I've got all that right, and then take it to things like Drive-Through RPG or something. And I'll always have the PDF because that's always just great because anyone can have that. And then because I would like to sell it out like that way, and then maybe I've also thought about in terms of like just making it more a community thing in terms of like things like the Bunny Man. I would love to encourage game jams or something, or because it is the Powered by the Apocolypse system, I also want people to be like, sell your one shot that you can use with this game. Or, if you've got a character or a different archetype kind of thing, like I would love that. I would love to see people do that too. And just spread it like that.
The Bunny Man was like a joke cryptid that I had heard about that actually like exists in air quotes exists in the real world, because it's something that like comes from Virginia, and it's specific to like a bridge area, but that's where seeing like the archetypes that you have in the game, because Bunny Man basically is a real life Jason. Again, air quotes, real life Jason, where he just like shows up, murders people, and pieces out every so often. But having your system actually helps like put it into something fun, because instead of from the hunter side, which is like the monster of the week, you can do it from like the Bunny Man Jason Voorhees side and just be like, no, we're going to go hunt criminals and teens and whatnot. Like another one that I'm working on is the Goat Man, who specifically dislikes teens. Like it's in his real world lore is like he hates teens. So it's like Bunny Man, Goat Man, Fish Man. I don't know, some other. They're all men.
You
for
could
some
really
reason.
have like an Animal Farm menagerie of these like animal themed killers that all just get together and they're like, yeah, hey, I hate teens too.
Do they hunt you? They hunt me.
Yeah. Oh man, I fell over. Like one pushed me, and there was some sort of Home Alone situation. It was ridiculous.
They're always making out in cars. I don't get it. Yeah. Jason is just sharpening his machete.
Yeah. In the back.
Testing it.
Everyone that's sees. Good. That's good.
Yeah. What is something like you kind of talked about almost like building community? What is something that you like? What's a current goal that you have for this? I know that you're doing the playtest, but do you have any other goals around like starting like a Discord channel or something to like group people together?
I'd love to actually start getting into that, because that's another area that I'm not super familiar with or like very experienced at. And so seeking out other people that have done it. I'd also like to, see other actual play people and either send them what I've got or be like, hey, could I ever appear if that would ever interest you? And send that out, and maybe even like appear on some or actually play them, because I've not really done that very much, or like online ttrpgs either. But it's something that I consume content wise. And then from there, maybe whether it's like making a different Twitter account or some sort of account just for the game itself, and then maybe that Discord, and really just encourage people to like play and share it. And then I'd also just like to for Halloween do something. That's been sort of a goal in the back of my mind, whether it's like do a live thing here in Australia somewhere and like book out a bar and get some people and be like, if you're interested in this, come along and see, and have like because ideally I'd also love it to be something that people can use as like a ttrpg podcast resource, or I'd love to do one of those as well. That might not be a goal for this year in terms of achievability, but definitely like that kind of thing. Like I'd love to capture the stories that people tell through it. So yeah, it would definitely be like, I think once it's released, the goal for now is like get it released officially, and then go through printing stuff while doing community things and being like, I am now satisfied with this thing. I will now show the world my baby. Here we go, beautiful baby. And then take it from there and be like, hi, would you be interested in this? Or like, here, take this, have a look. Yeah.
Yeah. After we're done, I'll have to send you links to a couple podcasts that I like that do this. Heck, I'll name one of them. Rolled Standard. I had them on before.
Oh,
and
cool.
They test out things. There's one that I'm working on kind of as a love letter to them, where it's more Shonen Jump-y of a system.
Yeah, nice.
But like this particularly would probably hit their same vibe because they do Morkborg, gruesome like, stuff. So yeah, that would work. And then also I've talked about it with like OKSDM, who I had on recently.
Yes, that's right.
The Rising Tides Discord channel,
cool.
which is where you can like go and help workshop ideas or have people play test things for you and whatnot. Which that like people are watching, it's excellent to get that like feedback in general or resources. Because I know that there's so much online community building here, definitely in like the States, but how do you feel like there's any roadblocks being in like Australia trying to get your material like out there?
It's sort of it is in a way, and it's also not, or it's still sort of, it feels like it is very much in Australia, or I feel like maybe it's that sort of thing as well where more the Australian TTRPGs or some that I've seen of that kind of thing. There's some amazing creators out there, but then it feels like some of the other ones, primarily more board games that come out of Australia, I think, are also like Australiana themed. So that was one that I'd worked on in the past as well, because I was like, I'll do an Australian one and then it'll be great. And, I was going to go through these different avenues, and then I was like, do I want to do that though? And does it have to be that? But, when I went to PAX, there was some super cool stuff. I think I actually bumped into this guy who'd done a system called, or a game called Parslings. And it was funny because I think I'd been following it or looking at it online, had no idea they were in Australia. And then I went to PAX, and then this guy's like, oh, hey, I can't help but see you playtesting. I'm as well. My name's da-da-da. And then exchange Discords or something and see him, and I'm like, oh, what? He's that guy. Like, And it was sort of like after that where I was like, oh, you really can do it here and get it like out online or outside of the island. But it is a bit tougher in terms of like, we have the one PAX and some of it's like delegated to here or there. There's like a few notable, like, I think like Australian-based actual play kind of stuff. I think like Dragon Friends is one off the top of my head that's kind of do live circuit stuff. And they're really funny. It's just like Melbourne and Sydney-based comedians and that kind of thing. But beyond that, it's a lot less. And so you feel a bit more like, how do I when you get into the niche thing, where that's where I felt like kind of going to PAX, I was like, well, they got Call of Cthulhu and they got D&D, and then does anyone like equally funny to horrible tabletops? Anyone? Can I get a shout out? It felt like a little less of a resource, but they're out there. It's just I think maybe slightly harder to find.
If I forget the specific encounter, this is like a negative story. But it was some years ago, and it was actually like over, I want to say East Coast or Europe, but in America, I'm West Coast, and we're not great about geography outside of the US. But they were doing a horror tabletop at a convention, and they just like traumatized everyone within the first opening intro because of some choices they made. How do you suggest like people who like if they want to play test it, or they're like, I really love gritty, hostile style horror things. How do you suggest like, hey, approach your players about what game you want to play?
I guess it's sort of like because I've definitely like heavily implied, not said like but through the system it is very much like I wanted to make it clear that the bias that I'm coming from is it's going to be a little funny, or like that sort of thing. If people don't want to do that, then that's fine. I think it's sometimes something like, depending on who you're playing with and depending on how familiar they are with horror or the types of horror stuff that they consume, check with them what they consume, like the group on the whole, see what's sort of like in the middle there, what sort of games they've played, how scary they want it to be, and then just sometimes doing like a rating system kind of thing, like a squeamish meter pretty much. Because I've got one, or sort of with my players, it was funny because some would be like, I'd chop his head off and then I throw it and da-da-da. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. And then I always have to be like, that's not fine for everyone. That's fine for me and this table that I'm at right now. But then with us, it was sort of something that never came up, but also one where, I would cut that description short or be like, ooh, I don't know about that. Like something to talk about where it's like, violence for the screen in a very over-the-top way is great. Getting into like torture-y stuff, or like, like even just that one where it's funny, where I'll be like, I could happily watch someone's head explode. But if anyone's like, I'm going to take out each of your fingernails one by one, I'm like, get me out of the room. I don't want to see it, which is almost feels hypocritical, but that's my level. So that's one of those ones where I'm like, hey, this is a funny kind of da-da-da, but we're not like torturing people. That's not a thing, because we don't need to do that. And so if you cut off an arm, that's fine. But if we're going to do a long thing, if you're like scene stealing with your being gruesome, then that's also just like maybe not great play etiquette too. So I think it's sort of like, get a vibe check your players and what kind of media they consume, what kind of things you as a GM like to do, and find the compromise there. And then you can set the tone with your characters and also your moments. Like if people do want that spooky thing, or there is a player that does have a spookier sort of tendency, or maybe more horrific, you can give them that separately, perhaps either after session, or if everyone else is comfortable, mid-session, where you're sort of like, you have that blood red vision and you're seeing, gnashing teeth and stuff like that. And then you can kind of cut back to that in that way, and everyone else, and then just sort of say, you're staring at your friend whose eyes just kind of roll back into his head. And so you're almost like separating it for your players as well. But yeah, I just say kind of check with everyone what kind of stuff they like, and then see if that's cool for everyone, or just, cater or don't, but set the precedent early.
Is there any horror that you think your like playtest probably shouldn't cover? Like, is there a genre?
Well, I think because this was a big issue for me, thinking about like where it's sort of like, I don't actually want to encourage murder. or these kind of things. These are parts of the tropes. This is an ode to the fantastical nature of horror. So I think it is sort of those things where it's sort of like, I think the derivement of pleasure from the violence should be it being like a scene or a set piece or kind of like part of it, and making sure that it is that balance of like, we're not trying to emulate life. It's like this is a system that's more like you are playing a game. So, ham it up. It's kind of like if some of the GTA series was like less serious in moments, or like where they have these very serious moments, they still have these wacky characters. Sort of like, I want wacky characters and then this kind of violence through it. Because I don't want to like draw the line at sort of like, murder stuff, or kind of like gore fetishy kind of things, which is also just sort of like not maybe as great to play in a party as well, which is sort of what this game is about, unless everyone's on board with it. But then that table can do what it wants somewhere else. If the GM's cool, if they're all, then okay, that's fine. But I think, generally, that's probably where I'd draw the line.
Makes me think about like the whole table is just Cenobites, and they're playing in the dark section of the game store by themselves, and they're like, pleasure is pain, pain is pleasure. Play with the puzzle cube.
I guess that's sort of the hope of like having the archetypes, or like having players balance each other out. Because I love Cenobites. I think they're great, and I think that that's such a funny. Well, I love it. Funny. But funny. It is. It's a great resource to draw from in the horror world, and hopefully, like, sometimes having players that are completely different, almost in it, like, it will just indirectly, just by proxy, draw the seriousness out of it just enough where it's sort of like a Cenobite standing next to Chucky is never going to look as scary as standing by itself. Because you're just sort of like, why are you holding this like backpack? And it's like, to keep all my cubes. And, it's sort of like, you can still have that fun, like, pleasure, creepy kind of character. Yeah. But, I'd hope to sort of like draw away a little bit from it.
Yeah. It makes me think of the worst or best buddy comedy of Chucky and a Cenobite. Just like Pinhead.
Oh, like, wow. Yeah.
Where do you want to go, Chucky?
Yeah.
I want to go kill some teenage. Some whatever.
Okay. Yeah, I like it almost feels like that very, very sort of odd couple where it's like, kill teenagers again. Like, can't we go and, and he's like, I don't want to put nails in me or anything. Like, just like, okay. And then they both go to a department store and they're just buying things.
Pinhead is getting like everything from their hardware store. Chucky's getting everything from like the sports and kids section.
Yeah. And then it would be, Pinhead would have to buy the cigarettes for Chucky or whatever. Like,
No, I swear he's like 57, just trapped in the body of a child's toy.
Yeah, this is an adult. I'm being arrested right now. Yeah, wow.
I believe that's all the questions I had. I am just ecstatic that time zones worked and you said yes.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me and interviewing. It's always a pleasure to find someone who's happy to talk about horror and mechanics, because it's a funny mix. But yeah, great.
Thank you for watching. If you would like the bargainer to find you, then please leave your front door unlocked and say its name 3 times while hiding under your bed. If not, check out one of the other videos.